So, hello, Fleur. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, thank you. Yeah, setting into the weekend as well.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for having me today, Patrick. Uh,
Anytime, Fleur, anytime. Your profile really stood out for me because I have never come across someone who does what you do, and is also a CFA charter holder.
yeah, I would have to say it's not the traditional route of getting around to what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. I guess we have quite a bit in common in that we probably went the corporate route for many years. At least in my case, I realized I was a bit of a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah. But it takes decades to realize this, doesn't it?
Really does. It
Yeah.
really does. There's safety in let's say job stability. And
Yeah.
I read somewhere that job stability is really an illusion. It's income stability that we need.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do, I guess it's something we pick up from parents that a stable job will bring a stable income, which means a stable and successful life. But perhaps as business practices change and as our own employment interests change, that is an illusion. And what we need to be trying to build for ourselves is stable income, but also some financial resilience so we can handle when we don't have stable income.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that safety fund, right?
yeah, yeah,
So, Fleur,
yeah.
can you just tell us a bit what it is that you do and what brings you to this very moment now?
Well, I'm a money psychologist and I'm an executive coach, and I came around to realizing that I love looking at and thinking about how people behave with money more than simply the nuts and bolts of financial education, which is terribly important. But I've had, I'll give you the potted history, otherwise it's too long. But I've had a career in finance, and it lasted about 18 years in the corporate life. And I was a banker for 18 years. And through that time, um, I always had this problem that, I've been through a couple of financial crises, and when I was a junior banker, the global financial crisis hit, and I wasn't being paid much. But my bosses and my bosses' bosses were getting really, really worried about what would they do if they lost their jobs. And I was sitting here going, but you're really well financially educated. Most of these people have, masters in finance, plus a lot of experience. You're really well compensated. So you have the knowledge and you have the income stream to be building a really strong financial basis for yourself and your family. And yet you're worried about your financial resilience. So what's going on? Because it's certainly not a knowledge gap um, for for these people who are working in finance. So I was really intrigued by that. How is it that the financial professionals are still struggling themselves with their own personal finances? And so fast forward a number of years, I worked my way up the ladder, and eventually became one of the more senior people who had the the nice income. And what happened for me was a baby came along, and suddenly my financial resilience was tested, and I was thinking, oh my God, I haven't prepared properly for this. I've taken my 18 years of, or decades of finance and high income, and what do I have to show for it? And it was a really painful moment where I was like, I need some help, but I can't ask anyone for help because I'm a financial professional. So, so who do I go to for help? This is my job. I should be fine at this. Um, so after a lot of consideration in 2020, I decided to leave my banking job and to retrain in coaching and behavioral change so that I could merge what I knew about finance with the science of behavioral change to help people who were in my situation change their behavior with money. So it's not so painful because it can be really, really stressful.
That's so interesting because as I guess a fellow charter holder and an accountant by profession, as well as someone who worked in that a similar corporate setting, nowhere near as esoteric as yours. It was very much it really resonates with me, and yet I'm I guess I'm humble enough to say I'm not ashamed anymore to say that CFA charter, the masters, the accounting degrees, while all very valid qualifications, still did not prepare me how to deal with my money situation with all that entails. And of course, money is such a broad subject. I feel that even today, I am yet to meet an expert in money. So it is an evolving subject in itself, but
Yeah.
also it kind of resonates in the sense that if people like us weren't, let's say, taught how to deal with money,
Yeah.
let alone the behavioral elements, imagine, people in the street.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, there's a real story behind finance that and sometimes it can be this hugely complex and complicated thing, and you think of financial markets and systems and how global markets are so interconnected. But really, when it comes down to us, individuals, money or good money management is quite simple.
Yes.
And somehow that story of being able to manage the simple stuff yourself is valid. Um, that gets lost in all the noise about um, financial complexity and education. And you and I were CFA charter holders. My God, we put ourselves through the ringer to pass those exams. And yet we have all this knowledge in our head, but it comes back down to our behaviors and getting back to the simple stuff. And when you've gone through all these exams, when you've done a master's, when you've got all of this experience, and then you sit and go, well, actually, financial management it comes down to some simple concepts. There's a part of me, at least, which goes, why the hell did I do all of that then? But I guess it's part of the journey of this realization. Um, and and if I can say one thing, it's something that I say to my friends who aren't in financial services. I sit down and say, seriously, if you can read, add and subtract pretty well and use a calculator on your phone and ask good questions and understand that, you know, these concepts are not so hard that the average person can't understand them. If you have these basic skills, you are capable of managing your money well. But we get told these stories that we need X qualification, Y qualification, this knowledge, that knowledge to be able to manage money well. So we spend our time in textbooks instead of looking at our own behavior.
I love it. So what do those three letters CFA mean to you, Fleur?
Ah, I will, I'll answer this two ways. They first mean that I know how to pass an exam and I know how to uh, take a challenge and really go at it and make myself achieve a goal once I've got my head around it, once I think it's important enough. But being a CFA charter holder, my story is I started studying for the exams after the global financial crisis. And I was working in Asia. And here I am, this, personable, young, I was 28 at the time, young woman working in Asia. And I'm just going to say it really bluntly, I was a young white woman working in Asia. So my picture is that I'm really good at the qualitative skills, I'm really good at the people skills, but people didn't quite, people in the industry around me didn't quite believe that I could do the numbers because people like me didn't do the numbers. Uh, So I knew as part of my brand to be able to convince people that, yes, I can do the analytics as well as the people skills. I had to have something like a CFA charter holder charter on my business card. And seriously, people would do the double take. They'd be like, oh, hi, this nice lady. Oh, her name is Fleur. And in Asia, when you receive somebody's business card, you receive it with two hands and you have a good look at it. And people would receive my business card with two hands, look at me and go, oh, you've got a CFA charter. Like, yes, I do. And it seriously opened doors for me.
Good thing.
So on the one hand, it, oh, do I use the knowledge today in the way that I thought I would? No, not really. But absolutely, it opens doors. It means that when I'm talking to people about their financial behavior, instead of going, yeah, you'd say that you're a psychologist. I'm like, yeah, I'm a psychologist. I'm also a charter holder. So I know how to run the numbers. It's not my zone of genius, but damn it, I know how to run the numbers. So you test me, I will come out. I will come out on top. So it really is still that cachet that people will respect.
Yeah, it really is. It's a
Yeah.
bit like a passport. And at least in my case, the CFA charter and the exams, besides being a real test of my mental resilience and overall strength, was the fact that it did kind of change the way I think, in a
Mm,
way. It molded my reasoning in the sense that before the exams or before the studying for the CFA exams, I thought in a certain way, and then after I thought in another.
mm.
But yeah, people do look at you differently. And
Yes.
my other question is, I wonder if you had like a funny moment or a dramatic moment, or what was your routine like, or what
Oh, oh,
really differentiated it.
oh, my routine was bonkers. So, like many people, I was doing a full-time job while I was studying for the CFA exam. Um, and at that time, I was a real morning person. So I'd get up and do 2 hours of study before work because by the time the end of the day came around, I'd just be like
Tired.
struggling. So I got up, got my coffee, 2 hours of study, boom, 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 before work, and then I change out of my pajamas and get my game face on and get ready for work. And then I'd do another 10 hours on the weekend. So it would often be just a full day on Saturday or a full day on Sunday. And I'd try to have one day off a week. But you know, someone said to me, look, you need 20 hours of study a week. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to need that. I'm going to need all the help I can get. So that was my routine, and that was for 6 months before the exams. So I was a hermit for those 6 months. And then when I found out that I'd passed, it would be kind of that relief of, oh yeah, I passed. And then the whole, oh God, now I've got to do the next level. But yeah, that was my routine. And I guess, you know, the best part of it for me was in level 3. That was when behavioral finance and behavioral economics was introduced. And that was like me finally, after all of these years of studying finance, going, oh my God, there's a psychological element of it.
I don't
Of
even remember this
course.
part. It was a tiny part.
It
What?
was a tiny part. It was like,
Imagine.
you know, 2, 3 pages worth in the curriculum out of those,
Three.
those thousands of pages. But I latched on to that bit going, this makes sense. Finally, I understand why I don't get these concepts of economic markets working perfectly, because I'm always there going, but they don't work perfectly. We have crises, we have booms and busts, we have people making completely irrational decisions, even really sophisticated investors. So, what the hell is going on? So, it was that moment, like, if it weren't for the CFA, here's the irony, if it weren't for the CFA, would I have followed the path that I'm on now? I'm not sure I would have. Don't think I would have discovered behavioral economics until a lot later. And that was the start of my journey to coaching, behavioral change, and looking at our behavior with money.
One likely source.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so our routines were very, very similar. I'd wake up every single day without fail at 4 a.m.,
yeah,
study 2 hours and get ready for work, then finish by 6. I was at Deloitte at the time, so you can imagine. Then maybe do an hour at most in the
yeah.
evening, but that was curtains for me. And level 3, I'll never forget this. Jesus, so level 3 was the worst one for me in many aspects because it was the last one. Then if you failed, you had to wait another year back
Yeah.
then, to repeat it. So I was like really fed up. And like a week before, our uh, our bathroom wasn't working quite well, and there was a funny sound in the flushing, in the toilet.
Yeah.
And as you would 1 week before the exam, you'd kind of put it off and think,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, I'll do it after the exam. I'll deal with it after. But a day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days. The day before the exam, the toilet explodes.
Oh God.
Explodes the day before, and I was living in a maisonette, which is like
Yeah.
a ground floor. So everyone's, yes, kind of went to our floors and exactly. And I was planning on obviously taking it easy that day and chilling and easing my way into the exam.
Yeah.
But I spent the whole day sweeping and squeezing and God knows
Oh.
what else. So
Oh.
much so that I went to the exam sore. My muscles were sore.
Wow.
So
And to sit and to do those 2 blocks of the exam.
6 hours.
Oh my word. And I remember it so clearly. We were in this huge hall.
Mm.
There must have been about 3,000 people
I
uh,
mean,
doing it. And I remember sitting at lunchtime, like convincing myself to stay and to not leave, because I was convinced that I was going to fail. I had struggled so much through that exam, and I really had to kind of work myself up to go back in and do the second half. I've never had nerves and anxiety like that before. Yeah.
It's true. Level two was really like that for me when I thought, I'm not gonna go in the second session. And then somehow, by some divine providence or whatever, I just felt the second session. I just started ticking them off. I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this. And somehow I scraped through. But yeah, that's another sort of qualm that I have with the educational system, in that why does your fate have to depend on one exam?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
harsh. Very hard.
Yeah, it is harsh, and it requires a very narrow skill set, I think, which is not, once something I've learned in studying a bit about behavioral change is the need to adjust for many different skill sets, and for real life, like how applicable is an exam situation to real life. In real life, we have access to knowledge and information, and that is a challenge in itself, being able to sift through a whole lot of information and to work out quickly what is relevant, um, which is a slightly different skill set to just sucking in all of this information, trying to hold it in your head for long enough that you can kind of get it out on the paper. And then you walk out of that examination room and suddenly all of that knowledge you sucked up, it disappears. Like, I don't know where it goes, but it certainly doesn't stay in your head.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it was, I remember that time as a very, very formative time for me. Um, s-
Yes.
so you're a founder, Fleur, of a very, very nicely named firm called WTF Money.
Honey.
What do you
Yes.
do?
Um, I I help people with their own, can I swear? I'm going to have to swear, with
Go
their
for it.
own financial shitstorms. Um, and often I work with professionals, finance professionals, uh, because they come to me and they go, look, I know what I need to do. There's just something holding me back from the good practice. What is going on? Like, what is wrong with me? A lot of my clients sit in front of me and go, well, what the hell is wrong with me? I know what I should be doing, but why am I not doing it? Why is it so hard? And through the coaching that I do with them, it's a little bit, you know, some people call it therapeutic. It is
Mhm.
a little bit like financial therapy, because I help people look at their emotional ties to their behavior and the meaning of money for us. And especially like what we said before about stable job, financial stability, what success means to people. Often money and success are conflated in these ways. And we find it, especially people who've been working within the financial services for so long, we find it hard to really decouple that idea of success to the idea of how much we're getting paid and what we're doing with that money and how wealthy we feel. And these are all really emotional considerations and emotional topics. And really, they go far back in our lives. The best thing that we can sometimes do is look at where our money stories have come from. Look at, what has money meant to our families in the past and the generations before. I mean, in my family, I come from a family of Italian immigrants on both sides, um, who emigrated from Calabria and also the area around Sorrento, and ended up in Australia. So money for many generations of my family meant survival. It meant being able to raise your children and have a good education. It meant not starving. So there are such important ties to the meaning of money in my family. Um, and these are messages that come down to us, and we can't help but absorb them. And sometimes what we need to do is to stop and think about it, and think about, give ourselves the grace to think about, okay, so that might be the message I've absorbed, but now what do I want money to mean to me?
So true. It says so much to unpack there, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's not easy because no one talks about money.
So true. I mean, when I deal with my clients, I try and make sure to leave some space for this behavioral element. I am by no means a qualified therapist by any stretch of the imagination, but yes, you need to formulate an opinion on a client based on their own money history, and
Yeah,
it really affects their day-to-day decisions. And just yesterday, in fact, I had a client, and she was spending very uncontrollably.
yeah,
So she'd get her salary, and then by the following week, it would have gone.
yeah,
And it turns out she was a bit of a compulsive spender. So all that it entailed to get her on the straight and narrow was to literally say, okay, when you go and buy something, think about it, hold back, wait for 3 days, use the 3-day rule. And then if you want it in 3 days, go
then
for it.
come.
And
Yeah,
that little behavioral trick shifted her financial situation, made her feel more confident, and then we could apply the techniques that then I studied for on budgeting, saving, and so on.
yeah,
So it's so true. It's so true what you say. And I think this field, financial therapy, money in general, is going to explode. It has to grow, and it has to come from our children who need to be financially literate.
yeah, yeah. And I think, children are such a great spark and an inspiration. And it's something I look at. My daughter will understand more about money and technology than I ever will. And yet we put such pressure on ourselves as parents that, what we've learned about money, we need to then regurgitate and give that to our kids. But actually, perhaps we should stop and think, what are our kids learning about money that we never had to realize, or that we never had a chance to sit down and realize? Um, and for me, it's simply that use of technology has made financial transactions so quick and so frequent that, our brains respond to it in a completely different way. I grew up, and the only way I could spend my pocket money was by literally walking down the street to a store and handing over the cash. And now we can spend through games on the iPad. We can order stuff online. We can give our kids cards to make their own purchases, and these are all great opportunities. But we have to also realize that our children are learning different ways of making financial decisions, which are much, much faster than perhaps we did growing up. So we need to explore different ways to to help them slow down, adjust their spending, and not simply say, which I hear all the time, kids are spending too much money. Like, well, of course they are. The technology allows them to. Um, the technology allows us to spend too much money as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think, taking away the judgment, taking away this whole generational divide, we're all in it together. We're all struggling together. And sometimes we don't have the answers. Maybe the kids are going to come up with some really good ideas.
Yeah, yeah, we can learn a lot from our kids.
Yeah.
We haven't learned what we never learned. And
Yeah.
looking at the future, looking at our own future and more so our children's future, there is, and we cannot ignore this ticking time bomb that is coming towards us, this pensions time bomb, that somehow or another we're going to have to instill saving habits to ourselves and to our offspring as well, to our children, because if, you know, when we grow old, no one's going to take care of us, so we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I see that in a lot of clients that I see and a lot of workshops that I give, that people, the vast majority of at least attendees that I have in my workshops are living paycheck to paycheck. And the numbers are clearly stating that, our current state pension scheme might not be sustainable.
Yes. Yes.
That's
And
shocking.
it's a real struggle. And especially, there's this sense of hopelessness if you're already in midlife and you're like, wow, I needed to start when I was 3. There's some information going around about, pension gaps for women. Um, but okay, so the best time to start saving was yesterday, and the second best time to start saving is today. And I'd say to people, be kind to yourself. It's not a moral failing that you haven't started saving. It just hasn't been explicit. Like, it hasn't needed to be explicit. And perhaps we need to come back to, we've got to be deliberate about this a bit more. This is not something that people just absorb. We need to talk about saving. We need to talk about slowing down our decision making, slowing down our spending when there are so many pressures to just keep on spending and spending and spending. I mean, we even get pressures from our governments to spend. And you can see it in many government policies, especially through COVID. We were encouraged to keep on spending with a lot of furlough protections to keep the money flowing around the economy. And if I'm going to dip into economics, which is not my field of expertise, I still think it's really dangerous to be pushing the growth responsibility onto consumer spending. I mean, really, I don't think that's the way to have sustainable GDP growth, if that's what governments are aiming for. And yet, this has been the message: spend, spend, go out to eat, support your local businesses, or just support big business by spending more and more. We get these messages in very subtle ways all the time.
So true. It seems like it's a universal fact.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is quite universal. Um, and so it's a universal challenge that we can give ourselves a little bit more compassion. There is this pressure, it is real. And sometimes we can't put our fingers on the pressure, but it has such an effect on our financial resilience.
I agree. So
Yeah.
Claire, I'm afraid time has flown.
Oh my gosh, it has.
Really. So where can people find you, Fleur?
The best way to find me is through my website. And the best way to find the website is to open up your favorite search engine and type WTF Money, and you will find me. You can also find me on LinkedIn is probably the best one. My name is Fleur Iannazzo, and that's a really hard one to spell. So just look for WTF Money.
Awesome, Fleur. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Patrick.